I stood in the deafening silence of the bridal suite, clutching white peonies that felt heavy in my grip. My father had promised to do the right thing today. Instead, the chapel doors remained closed, and 70 guests waited for a bride with no family to give her away. I checked my phone for the 100th time. No texts, no calls, just a coordinated, suffocating quiet that felt less like an accident and exactly like an execution. The light over Harbor Point was the color of a bruised plum when I woke up. It was 12 minutes past 4 in the morning, hours before the alarm was set to ring, but my body was already humming with that vibrating, electric frequency that sits somewhere between terror and joy. Today was the day. I sat up in the center of the king-sized bed at the Seabrook House Inn. The sheets were crisp, cold, and expensive. Outside the window, the Atlantic Ocean was merely a heavy, rhythmic sound in the darkness, crashing against the pilings of the pier down the street. I pressed my palms against my eyes and breathed in the scent of the room, lavender starch and old wood. 33 years of waiting, 33 years of trying to be the daughter who did not ask for too much, the daughter who kept her grades up and her voice down, the daughter who made herself small so her father would not have to make himself angry. And today, finally, it felt like the ledger was going to balance. 2 days ago, my father, Randall Martin, had looked me in the eye. He had taken my hand across the mahogany desk in his study, a room I usually entered only when summoned, and he had squeezed my fingers. "Grace," he had said, his voice rough with an emotion I rarely heard. "I know I have been hard on you, but I am going to do the right thing today. I promise." I held on to that sentence now as I slid out of bed. I am going to do the right thing. It was the first time in my life he had not added a condition. He had not said if you lose 5 pounds, or if you take that job I suggested, or if you break up with that boy. Just a promise, a clean, simple promise. I walked to the window and pulled back the heavy velvet curtain. The fog was rolling in off the water, thick and gray, swallowing the streetlights. It was a typical morning for this part of the coast, damp and clinging. But to me, it looked beautiful. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. I frowned, turning back. Who would be calling at this hour? I picked it up. The screen illuminated the dark room. It was a missed call. The timestamp read 12 minutes past 3 in the morning. Unknown number, no voicemail. I stared at it for a moment, my thumb hovering over the redial button. It was probably a wrong number, or perhaps a vendor having a panic attack about the centerpiece arrangement. I dismissed the notification and set the phone down. I was not going to let a glitch in the telecommunications network rattle me. Not today. A soft knock at the door made me jump. "Room service?" I asked, tightening the sash of my silk robe. "Delivery," a muffled voice said. I opened the door to find a young woman from the front desk holding a massive, overflowing crate of white hydrangeas and eucalyptus. She looked tired, her uniform slightly rumpled. "These were just dropped off," she said. Hoisting the crate into my arms, the florist van pulled away before I could get a signature. "They said they had another wedding in Boston and had to run." "Thank you," I said. Managing the weight of the box, I kicked the door shut with my heel and set the flowers on the vanity. It was odd. My florist, a sweet woman named Mrs. Gable, was meticulous about signatures. She had made me sign off on the shade of the ribbons 3 separate times. For her to drop $1,000 worth of flowers at the front desk without a handover felt out of character. I touched the petals. They were cool and damp. Maybe she was just busy. Maybe I was reading too much into it. That was my habit. According to my therapist, searching for disaster in the quiet moments. The door burst open 10 minutes later, and disaster prevention arrived in the form of Tessa Vance. My best friend and maid of honor swept into the room like a hurricane in sweatpants. She was carrying 2 coffees, a bag of bagels, and a garment bag that I knew contained a dress she would look stunning in. Tessa was an investigative journalist for a major paper in the city, and she approached my wedding with the same ruthless efficiency she applied to exposing corruption in City Hall. "Eat," she commanded, shoving a bagel into my hand before I could even say good morning. "I am too nervous to eat," I said, "You are going to eat," she said, kicking off her sneakers. "Because if you faint at the altar, I am not catching you. I am wearing heels. Grace, my center of gravity will be compromised." I took a bite of the bagel. It tasted like cardboard and anxiety, but I chewed it anyway. Tessa began unpacking her makeup kit, lining up bottles and brushes on the vanity with military precision. She paused and looked at me in the mirror. "How are you feeling?" she asked, her voice dropping an octave. Shedding the humor, I swallowed. "I feel good. I think—" "You think?" "I feel like it is actually happening." I said, "Ethan and I, the life we built. And my dad, I think he's actually on board." Tessa paused, a tube of mascara in her hand. She looked skeptical, which was her default expression when the subject of the Martin family came up. "He is walking you down the aisle," she said, stating it as a fact to be verified. "Yes. And your brother? Colin is behaving?" I smiled. "A groomsman told me last night that Colin confirmed the timeline. I have not heard from him directly. But apparently, he is all set." Tessa nodded slowly. "Good. That is good. Because if they pull any of their usual high drama today, I have a contact at the water department who can turn off the water to your father's office building. I am not joking." I laughed, and the tension in my chest loosened a fraction. This was why I loved her. Tessa did not just offer sympathy, she offered tactical support. "This day is about you." "Grace," she said, turning me to face the mirror. She put her hands on my shoulders. "It is about building a family that actually shows up. You know that, right? You are allowed to be happy. You are allowed to be the center of attention." I looked at my reflection. My eyes looked huge and dark. My skin pale. I looked like a woman waiting for something, though I was not sure if it was a celebration or a collision. "I know," I whispered. My phone pinged. I grabbed it, eager for a message from my father or Colin. It was Ethan. "Hey, beautiful. Just got to the venue. The chapel looks incredible. The light coming through the stained glass is going to make you look like an angel. Cannot wait to marry you." I smiled, typing back a quick, "I love you." A second message popped up from him immediately after. "Weird thing though. Mom just called me. She got some bizarre email this morning about safety protocols for the wedding. She is freaking out a little. Did you send anything out?" I stared at the screen. "Safety protocols?" "No." I typed, "Must be spam." "Tell her to ignore it. See you at the altar." I tossed the phone onto the bed. Spam. Of course it was spam. The world was full of digital noise. I refused to let it bleed into my reality. "Get in the chair," Tessa said, brandishing a hairbrush. "We have 3 hours until photos. I want you perfect." 3 hours later. I was standing in the center of the room. Encased in silk and lace, the dress was a masterpiece. A sleek, architectural column of white that flared gently at the hem. It was modern and sharp, just like the life I had built for myself in Harbor Point. I looked at myself in the full-length mirror. For the first time all morning, I felt steady. I looked like a bride. I looked like a woman who was loved. "Okay," Tessa said, checking her watch. "The photographer is set up in the garden. The timeline says first look with your dad is in 10 minutes. Is he here?" I checked my phone. "Nothing. I will call him." I said, I dialed my father's cell number. It rang once, twice, 3 times, then it went to voicemail. "You have reached Randall Martin. Leave a message." I hung up. "He's probably driving," I said, "or he is already downstairs and has no signal. The walls in this place are thick stone." Tessa frowned. "Okay, let us go down. He's probably waiting in the lobby." We gathered my bouquet. The heavy train of my dress draped over Tessa's arm and made our way out of the suite. The hallway was quiet. The hotel was a historic mansion converted into an inn, all dark wood paneling and Persian rugs. My heels clicked on the hardwood floor, a lonely sound that echoed in the corridor. When we reached the lobby, it was empty except for the concierge and a few guests checking out. I scanned the room. My father was a man who took up space. When Randall Martin entered a room, the atmosphere changed. The air became thinner, sharper, but the lobby felt standard, unremarkable. He is not here, I said, a small thread of panic weaving into my voice. Check the garden. Tessa said, maybe he went straight out. We walked through the French doors into the garden. The photographer, a cheerful man named David, was adjusting his lens. He looked up and smiled. Grace, you look stunning. Ready for the dad shots? I looked around the garden. The manicured hedges were precise. The fountain bubbled cheerfully, but there was no tall, gray-haired man in a bespoke suit waiting for me. He is not here yet, I said. David checked his watch. We are a little tight on time. We need to leave for the chapel in 45 minutes. Maybe we can do your solo portraits first. Sure, I said. My voice sounded thin. I posed near the roses. I smiled at the camera. I tilted my chin down, then up, but my mind was racing. My father was never late. He considered punctuality a moral virtue. If you were 5 minutes late to a dinner reservation, he would leave. Where was he? And where was Colin? I looked at Tessa, who was standing off to the side, furiously typing on her phone. She looked up and met my gaze. She shook her head slightly. I beckoned her over. Call Colin, I whispered. I did. She said, straight to voicemail. Call Aunt Sylvia. I did. No answer. A cold knot formed in my stomach. It was heavy and hard, like a stone swallowed whole. Let me see my phone, I said. Tessa handed it to me. I opened the family group chat, the one named Martin Wedding Weekend. The last message was from me, sent last night at 10 o'clock. So excited to see everyone. We start in 20 hours. I looked at the status. Seen by Dad at 10:15 p.m., seen by Colin at 10:20 p.m., seen by Aunt Sylvia at 10:22 p.m., seen by Cousin Mark at 11 p.m. They had all seen it. Not one of them had replied. I scrolled up. The chat had been active 2 days ago. Jokes about travel. Confirmation of hotel bookings. And now? Silence. It is fine, I said. Though my hands had started to shake. They are probably all together. They probably took a large van and got stuck in traffic on the bridge. That is why no one is answering. They are all in the same dead zone. Grace, Tessa said softly. The bridge is clear. I checked the traffic report. I ignored her. I dialed my father again. Beep, beep, beep. The tone was different this time. It was not ringing. It was a disconnect tone. I pulled the phone away and stared at it. I dialed again. The number you are trying to reach is not in service. The blood drained from my face. My father had used that number for 20 years. It was the number he used for business, for family, for everything. I dialed Colin. It rang once, then stopped abruptly. The call timer read 0 minutes 1 second. He declined the call. My brother, who had taught me how to ride a bike, who had held my hand at our mother's funeral, had just pressed the red button on my wedding day. I texted Aunt Sylvia, "Where are you guys? I'm getting worried." The reply was instantaneous. An auto-reply. "I cannot talk right now." It was too fast. It was a programmed response. I looked up at Tessa. The garden suddenly felt very cold. The gray sky seemed to be pressing down on us, suffocating the air. "They are not coming," I whispered. "Grace, do not say that," Tessa said, grabbing my arm. "We do not know that. They are not coming." I repeated, my voice rising. "Look at this. They blocked me, or they turned their phones off. All of them. At the same time." I looked around the garden, the empty bench where my father should have been sitting, the empty path where my cousins should have been laughing. It was a blackout, a coordinated, synchronized removal of presence. "Excuse me? Ms. Martin?" I spun around. A bellman from the hotel was standing there, holding a thick cream-colored envelope on a silver tray. He looked uncomfortable. "This was left at the front desk for you," he said. The manager said it was urgent. I stared at the envelope. My name, Grace, was written on the front in black ink. The handwriting was jagged, sharp. I knew that script better than my own. It was my father's handwriting. Tessa stepped forward. "I will take that." "No," I said. I reached out and took the envelope. My fingers were trembling so badly I almost dropped it. The paper felt heavy, like it contained lead. I tore the seal. There was a single sheet of paper inside. It was not stationery. It was plain printer paper, folded into thirds. I unfolded it. There was no salutation. No. Dear Grace, just 2 sentences scrawled in the center of the page. Do not marry him. If you do, you will lose everything your mother left you. There was no signature. I read it again. The words swam before my eyes. Do not marry him. And then the second sentence hit me like a physical blow. Everything your mother left you. I felt a strange, high-pitched ringing in my ears. My mother had died 5 years ago. Her estate had been small, some jewelry, a few antique books, a modest savings account that had been drained to pay for her hospice care. My father had handled the probate. He had told me, sitting in our living room with a glass of scotch in his hand, that it was all settled. Simple and settled. He had said, there is nothing left. Grace, just us. So what was this? What was everything? I felt the first crack in the dam. It started in my chest, a burning heat of humiliation. He was doing it again. He was making me dance. He was turning the most important day of my life into a leverage play. Grace? Tessa asked, her voice sharp with worry. What does it say? I handed her the paper. I could not speak. Tessa read it. Her face went white, then red. That son of a bitch! She hissed. She looked at me. Grace, this is insane. He is threatening you? On your wedding day? He is not just threatening me, I said, my voice sounding strange and hollow. He is bargaining. I looked at the empty garden. I realized then that the silence wasn't an accident. It wasn't traffic. It was a weapon. My father had organized a boycott of his own daughter's wedding to force a negotiation. He thought I would fold. He thought that if he took away the audience, if he took away the approval I had been begging for my entire life, I would crumble. He thought I would run back to him, crying, asking what I had to do to make him come back. He thought I was still 12 years old. I looked down at my dress. The silk was smooth under my fingertips. I am not stopping. I said, Grace, Tessa said gently, look at me. We can pause. We can figure this out. You do not have to go to the chapel right now. I am not stopping. I repeated. I turned to look at her. My eyes were dry. The tears were there, waiting, but they were behind a wall of sudden, cold fury. He wants me to cancel, I said. He wants me to call Ethan and say the wedding is off because Daddy is mad. He wants to prove he owns me. I grabbed my bouquet from the garden table. The stems were thick and green. I gripped them until my knuckles turned white. I am going to the chapel, I said, and I am going to marry Ethan. If my father wants to miss it, that is his choice, but he does not get to decide if I have a husband. Tessa stared at me for a long moment. Then, a fierce grin broke across her face. Okay, she said. Okay, let us go get you married. The drive to Baylight Chapel was a blur. I sat in the back of the vintage Rolls-Royce we had rented, staring out the window. The fog was lifting, revealing a pale, watery sun. I tried to keep my breathing even. In for 4 counts, out for 4 counts. When we pulled up to the chapel, I saw the cars, dozens of them. Ethan's family was here. Our friends from college were here. My coworkers were here. The driver opened the door. I stepped out. The air smelled of salt and pine. The chapel doors were open. I could hear the string quartet playing softly inside. It was a beautiful sound, delicate and precise. I walked into the vestibule. The coordinator, a frantic woman with a headset, ran up to me. Grace, you are here. Okay, we have a situation with the seating. I know. I said, the bride's side is empty. She looked relieved that she did not have to explain it. Yes, we tried to spread the groom's guests out, but it is still noticeable. And we are waiting on your father? He is not coming. I said, oh, she blinked. Okay, who will be walking you down the aisle? I will. I said, I will walk myself. She nodded, her eyes wide. Okay, brave. I like it. Okay. She spoke into her headset. Bride is solo. Repeat. Bride is solo. Cue the entrance music. The music changed. The traditional wedding march began. It sounded massive, filling the vestibule with triumphant brass. I stood at the threshold. Through the open doors, I saw the long aisle. I saw the backs of heads turning, and I saw the empty pews. Rows and rows of wooden benches on the left side of the church were bare. No cousins, no aunts, no brother, no father, just empty space where my history should have been. It was a physical gap, a missing limb. The humiliation washed over me, hot and stinging. Everyone was looking. Everyone was wondering, what is wrong with her? Why does her own family not love her enough to be here? Then I looked at the altar. Ethan was there. He looked handsome in his tuxedo, his dark hair neatly combed. He was watching the door. When he saw me, his face did not show pity. It did not show confusion. It showed love, pure, uncomplicated love. He smiled, and it was an anchor in the storm. I took a breath. I stepped forward. Left foot, right foot. I walked past the empty pews. I kept my head high. I did not look at the empty spots. I looked only at Ethan. The guests on the right side were whispering. I could hear the rustle of fabric, the low buzz of confusion. But I kept walking. I was halfway down the aisle when the music stopped. It did not fade out. It cut off. Abruptly, the silence that followed was shocking. I stopped. I looked up at the balcony where the musicians were. They were lowering their instruments, looking confused. A man in a dark suit, one of the private security guards the venue required, was walking briskly down the side aisle toward the altar. He walked right past me, not even making eye contact, and signaled to the officiant. The officiant, a kind, elderly pastor named Reverend Miller, leaned down. The guard whispered something in his ear. Reverend Miller's face went pale. He looked at Ethan, then at me. Ethan stepped down from the altar. Moving toward me, he took my hand. His grip was tight. "What is going on?" Ethan demanded, his voice echoing in the silent chapel. The guard turned to face us. He did not look apologetic. He looked professional, detached. "I am sorry," he said, loud enough for the first few rows to hear. "We have received a credible threat against the venue." A gasp went through the congregation. "What?" I asked. My voice was a whisper. An anonymous call was just placed to the police and the venue management. The guard said, "The caller stated there is a device in the building. We have to evacuate the chapel immediately." "No," I said. "No, that is a lie." "Ma'am, we cannot take chances," the guard said. "Everyone needs to leave. Now, please proceed to the parking lot in an orderly fashion." Ethan looked at me. His eyes were furious. "A device? Grace, it is them." I said, I felt the realization settle over me like ice water. It was not enough to boycott the wedding. They had to stop it. They had to ruin it completely. The guests were standing up now, panic starting to ripple through the room. People were grabbing their purses, looking around wildly. The beautiful sacred silence of the chapel shattered into the noise of fear. I stood there in the middle of the aisle, holding Ethan's hand, surrounded by empty pews and fleeing guests. My wedding was over. The private heartbreak of my family's absence had just been turned into a public spectacle of terror. I looked at the empty spot where my father should have been sitting. "Don't marry him," the note had said. He had not just made a threat. He had called in a bomb scare on his own daughter. And as the security guard ushered us toward the exit, pushing me out of the church I had just tried so hard to walk into, I realized one thing with terrifying clarity. This was not just about control anymore. This was a war, and I had absolutely no idea what I was fighting for. I only knew what I had just lost, everything. I walked out into the sunlight, the bright glare blinding me, and let the tears finally fall. Not for the wedding, but for the father I had finally, truly, lost forever. The side room of the Baylight Chapel smelled of floor wax and stale hymnals. It was a small, windowless space, usually reserved for counting the Sunday collection or storing extra folding chairs. But for the last 20 minutes, it had become a bunker. Outside, I could hear the muffled chaos of the evacuation. Sirens were beginning to wail in the distance, a rising and falling scream that cut through the heavy oak door. Inside, the silence was thick enough to choke on. I sat on a metal folding chair, my white dress pooling around me on the linoleum floor like a spill of milk. I stared at the wall, at a faded calendar from 2 years ago, trying to make sense of the last hour. My hands were in my lap, cold and still. I had stopped shaking. I think I had moved past shock into something deeper, something hollowed out and gray. Ethan was pacing the length of the small room, 4 steps one way, turn, 4 steps back. He had loosened his tie, and his jaw was set so hard I could see the muscle jumping near his ear. He looked like a man trying to physically contain an explosion. "He is not picking up," Ethan said, staring at his phone. "I have called the police captain directly. I have called the venue manager. No one is giving me a straight answer about the nature of the threat. It does not matter." I said. My voice sounded small in the cramped room. "It matters." "Grace," Ethan said, stopping in front of me. He crouched down, taking my hands in his. His palms were warm, a stark contrast to my own. "Someone called in a bomb threat on our wedding day. This is not a prank. This is a crime, and when I find out who did it, I am going to make sure they never come near you again." I looked at him. I loved him so much in that moment it hurt. He was trying to solve this like it was a logic puzzle, like it was an external attack from a stranger. He wanted to protect me. He did not understand yet that the danger was not coming from outside the house. It was coming from the foundation. It was not a stranger. "Ethan," I said quietly. He frowned, searching my face. "What do you mean?" "I mean that my family is not here." I said, "I mean that my father sent me a note threatening me if I married you." And then, 10 minutes later, "The ceremony is stopped. Do you really think that is a coincidence?" Ethan stood up, running a hand through his hair. He walked to the door and back again. "That is insane. Grace, I know your father can be controlling. I know he's difficult, but calling in a domestic terror threat? That is a felony. He is a businessman. He cares about his reputation more than anything. He would not blow up his own standing in the community just to stop a wedding. Would he?" I asked. I thought about the look in Randall Martin's eyes whenever he felt he was losing control of a situation. It was not a hot anger. It was a cold, reptilian stillness. He would burn down a building to save a penny, provided he could blame the fire on faulty wiring. The door opened, and Tessa slipped inside. She closed it quickly behind her, leaning against the wood as if to barricade us in. She looked uncharacteristically rattled. Tessa was a woman who had reported from war zones and political riots, but her face now was pale, her lipstick stark against her skin. She was holding a notebook. "Okay," she said. "I got it." "Got what?" Ethan asked. "The details on the call," Tessa said. She walked over to me, ignoring Ethan for a moment. "Grace, I need you to listen to me." I cornered the venue manager. I told him I was going to run a story about their lax security protocols if he did not tell me exactly what the police told him. She flipped the notebook open. The call came in at exactly 4 o'clock. She said, "The caller used a voice scrambler, but they did not just say there was a bomb. They gave specifics." "What kind of specifics?" I asked. Tessa looked at her notes. They said, "Tell Grace Elizabeth Martin that the ceremony stops now." They used your full middle name, and they said, "Tell her that Eleanor would not want this." The air left my lungs in a rush. "Eleanor. My mother." Ethan swore softly. "Only family calls me Grace Elizabeth," I whispered. "And my mother? She has been gone for 5 years. No one talks about her, not like that." Tessa nodded grimly. "There is more. The caller said the device was set to go off at 4:15. That is exactly when you were scheduled to exchange rings." It was not a random time. It was the script. I closed my eyes. It was precise. It was personal. It was designed not just to scare everyone, but to send a message specifically to me. We are watching. We control the timeline. Ethan was vibrating with rage now. "I am going to kill him," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "I am going to drive to his house, and I am going to kill him. No, I said. I opened my eyes and stood up. The dress felt heavy, dragging at my waist. No, that is what he wants. He wants you to lose control. He wants you to look unstable. I remembered the smear campaign, the whispers about Ethan's temper. If Ethan showed up at my father's house screaming, the police would be called. And suddenly the narrative would be complete. Grace was saved from a violent man. We have to be smarter than them, I said. I walked to the small mirror on the wall. My veil was askew. I reached up and unpinned it, letting the tulle fall to the floor. I did not need it anymore. I was not a bride walking down an aisle. I was a woman walking into a war. Grace, Tessa said. Think, has your father said anything lately? Anything that didn't make sense at the time? I stared at my reflection. I tried to look past the fear and the exhaustion. I replayed the last month in my head. Randall had been different. Usually, he was distant, critical, but for the last few weeks, he had been almost warm. He had called me just to check in. He had sent a gift for the apartment, a set of crystal vases that I hadn't asked for. I want us to start fresh, he had said over dinner 2 weeks ago. I know I've been hard on you, but things are changing. I want to secure your future. And then, the request. Stop by the office after the honeymoon, he had said, casually, while pouring wine. There is just some paperwork, housekeeping stuff for the trust. We need to update some signatures since you are changing your name. It is simple. Just a signature. A signature. My stomach turned over. He wanted me to sign something. I said slowly. He was desperate for me to come to the office. He kept saying it was simple. What was it? Tessa asked. He said it was for the trust. I said, but there is no trust. Mom's estate was settled years ago. He told me there was nothing left. Ethan looked at me. If he told you there was nothing left, why does he need a signature? Exactly, I said. The door opened again, and this time it was Naomi Hale, Ethan's mother. She looked terrified. Her gray silk dress was rumpled, and she was clutching her phone like a lifeline. Ethan, she cried, rushing over to hug him. Oh, thank God. Are you both okay? The police are everywhere. They are sweeping the building with dogs. We are fine. Mom, Ethan said, hugging her back. We are just trying to figure out what happened. Naomi pulled back, her eyes darting to me. She looked hesitant, fearful. Grace, she said, I did not want to show you this, not today. But after what just happened, she held out her phone. I received an email this morning. She said, I thought it was spam. I deleted it. But then, when the alarm went off, I went back and found it. I took the phone. The screen was bright in the dim room. The subject line read, Urgent concern regarding Grace Martin. The sender was the Harbor Point Family Renewal Council. I read the text. Dear Mrs. Hale, we are writing to you out of a deep concern for the spiritual and financial well-being of your son and his intended bride. It has come to our attention that Grace Martin is currently under undue influence and is not in a mental state to enter into a binding legal contract such as marriage. Proceeding with this union could trigger severe legal consequences for both families. We urge you to intervene. We are working with the family to protect Grace during this difficult episode. Sincerely, the Board of Directors. The words swam before my eyes. Undue influence, mental state. Difficult episode. They were painting me as insane. Ethan read it over my shoulder. Who the hell is the Family Renewal Council? He asked. I know them, I said, feeling a wave of nausea rise in my throat. I handed the phone back to Naomi. Tessa, look them up, I said. Tessa was already typing on her phone. Harbor Point Family Renewal Council. She read, Nonprofit, Mission Statement, Restoring the integrity of the traditional family unit through financial and spiritual guidance. She scrolled down. Board of Directors, she said. She paused. She looked up at me. Chairman. Randall Martin, she said. I closed my eyes. Of course. He was the chairman. My father, who had not spoken to his own sister in 10 years, who had belittled my mother until she shrank into a shadow, was the chairman of a council on family integrity. He is using it. I said, He is using the nonprofit to legitimize the attack. If he says I am unstable, and he puts it on official letterhead, people will believe him. He is a pillar of the community. I am just the emotional daughter. This is a setup, Ethan said. The whole thing. The wedding no-show, the bomb threat, the email. It is a coordinated strike, Grace. Tessa said, look at the funding partners. She turned her phone screen toward me. Platinum partner, Silver Ridge Trust Services. Silver Ridge. The name rang a bell, but I couldn't place it. I stood up straighter. I was done crying. The shock had burned off, leaving behind a cold, hard clarity. I am going to his office. I said, what? Ethan asked. Grace, you cannot go there. The police. I do not care about the police. I said, my father is not at the police station, and he is not at home. He is at his office. That is where he feels safe. That is where he keeps his secrets. I turned to the door. Grace, you are in your wedding dress, Tessa said. I looked down at the silk and lace. It was ruined. The hem was gray with dust from the floor. Good, I said. Let everyone see. I walked out of the side room. I did not look back. The drive to the financial district was silent. Ethan drove, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. Tessa sat in the back, typing furiously, likely digging into the tax filings of the Family Renewal Council. I sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window. The town of Harbor Point looked different to me now. It was no longer the sleepy coastal haven where I had grown up. It was a stage set, the charming brick storefronts, the manicured parks. It all felt like a facade hiding something rotting underneath. We pulled up to the Martin Advisory Group building. It was a modest 2-story brick building on a corner lot, tasteful and understated. The windows were dark. I got out of the car. The wind coming off the harbor was cold, whipping my hair across my face. I didn't feel it. I marched up the steps, my dress billowing around me like a storm cloud. The front door was locked. I pounded on the glass. Dad, I screamed. Open the door. Silence. I pounded again, harder. The glass rattled in the frame. I know you are in there. Grace, Ethan said, coming up behind me. He put a hand on my shoulder. Grace, look. He pointed to a piece of paper taped to the inside of the glass. Closed due to emergency. It was typed, neat, official. He knew. I said, he printed this out before he even left the house this morning. Hey, a voice called out from the sidewalk. We turned. Mr. Henderson, who owned the dry cleaning business next door, was standing there, holding a ring of keys. He looked at me, at the wedding dress, the wild hair, the 2 people flanking me, and his eyes went wide. Grace? He asked. Is that you? Should you not be at the church? Mr. Henderson? I said, walking down the steps. Did you see my father today? He nodded slowly. Yeah, I saw him. About 2 hours ago. Was he alone? Tessa asked, stepping forward with her journalist instincts engaging. No, Mr. Henderson said. He was with a guy. Suit and tie. Looked like a banker. Carrying a briefcase. And Randall. Your dad. He was carrying a box. Like a file box. Did he say where he was going? I asked. No. Mr. Henderson said. He looked in a hurry. He peeled out of the parking lot like the devil was chasing him. I thought it was weird. Randall never speeds. He left with the files. I said to Ethan, he is scrubbing the place. My phone buzzed in my hand. I looked down. Colin. My heart jumped into my throat. I swiped the answer button. Colin? I said. Where are you? Grace. His voice sounded tinny, distant, and terrified. I cannot talk, he said. I only have a second. Why were you not at the wedding? I demanded. Why did you block me? They took my phone. He whispered, I am using a burner. Grace, listen to me. Do not sign anything. Whatever they put in front of you, do not sign it. Who is they? I asked. Colin, are you with Dad? He is not thinking straight. Colin said, he is scared. Grace, he is really scared. Just Do not marry Ethan today. If you marry him, the protections fall away. That is what the lawyer said. What lawyer? I asked. I have to go. Colin said. Someone is coming. Colin, I am sorry. Grace, I am so sorry. The line went dead. I lowered the phone slowly. He is not angry. I said to Ethan and Tessa. He is terrified. He said they took his phone. Who? Ethan asked. I do not know, I said. But he said if I marry you, the protections fall away. Protections? Tessa asked. That sounds like legal jargon. It sounds like a threat wrapped in a safety blanket. I said, we need to go home. I said, I need to think. I cannot think here. We drove back to our apartment. It was a second-floor walk-up in a converted Victorian house. It was supposed to be the place we returned to tonight as husband and wife. We had champagne in the fridge. We had rose petals that I had hidden in the closet, planning to surprise Ethan. Now, it just felt like a crime scene waiting to happen. We walked up the stairs. Ethan went first, checking the landing. There was something stuck in the doorframe, a yellow slip. Ethan pulled it free and handed it to me. Attempted delivery. It read, Recipient, Grace Martin. The sender, Silver Ridge Trust Services. I stared at the name. It was the same name from the donor list on the council's website. They tried to deliver this at 3 o'clock. I said, while I was getting dressed, What is inside? Tessa asked. I don't know, I said, but they checked the box for signature required. Legal documents. I unlocked the door and we went inside. The apartment was quiet, exactly as we had left it. The just married banner Tessa had hung over the mantel looked mockery now. I sat down on the sofa, still in my dress. I felt like I was deflating. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving behind a deep, aching exhaustion. Why? I asked the room. Why go to all this trouble? If they wanted to stop the wedding, they could have just objected. They could have cut me off. Why the bomb threat? Why the lawyers? Why the coordinated blackout? Because it is not about the wedding, Ethan said. He was standing by the window, looking out at the street. He turned to face me. Grace, people do not do this for emotional reasons. They do not risk jail time for a grudge. They do this for money. Money? I laughed bitterly. I do not have any money. I work at a nonprofit. You are a landscape architect. We are not rich. Your mother, Tessa said. She was sitting at the dining table, her laptop open. I looked at her. My mother died with nothing. I said, Did she? Tessa asked. She turned the laptop around. I have been digging into Silver Ridge Trust Services, she said. They are a boutique firm, very exclusive. They specialize in generational asset protection. Basically, they hide money for rich families so they don't have to pay taxes on it. So? I asked. So, Tessa said. I cross-referenced your mother's maiden name, Eleanor Vance. No relation to me, sadly. And there is a public filing from 20 years ago. Tessa said, It is obscure. It was buried in a property transfer, but it lists Eleanor Vance as the primary beneficiary of a Grantham Holdings trust. I stared at her. Grantham was my grandmother's name. I never heard of it. I said, Exactly, Tessa said. But guess who was listed as the trustee? Randall Martin, I whispered. Tessa nodded. If that trust still exists, Tessa said, and if you are the beneficiary, then getting married might change who controls it. I stood up. My legs felt shaky. He has been lying to me. I said, For years. He told me there was nothing. And now? Ethan said, If you get married, maybe the control transfers to you. Or maybe he loses his power as trustee. That is why he needs the signature. I said, The simple signature. He needs me to sign away my rights before I get married and realize I have them. The realization hit me like a physical weight. My father had not just abandoned me. He had been stealing from me. For years. And when I finally tried to build a life of my own, he decided to burn it down rather than let me find out. My phone chimed. I looked at it. A text message. From Aunt Sylvia. I picked it up, expecting another auto-reply. It was not an auto-reply. Family meeting. Tonight. 7 o'clock. The Greywick Club. Private Room B. I read on. Do not bring outsiders. This is a private family matter to resolve the crisis you have caused. Be there, or we cannot protect you from what comes next. I looked at the time. It was 6:15, the Greywick Club. It was the most exclusive country club in the county. My father was a founding member. It was his turf, his fortress. They want me to come alone, I said. I showed the text to Ethan and Tessa. No way, Ethan said immediately. Absolutely not. You are not going there alone. They said no outsiders. I said, I am not an outsider. Ethan said, I am your fiancé, and I am your maid of honor, Tessa said, closing her laptop with a snap. And I am also the press. I looked at the text again. The crisis you have caused. They were still trying to spin it. They were still trying to make me the villain. I walked to the bedroom. Where are you going? Ethan asked. To change. I said, I am not going to face them in this dress. I am done being the bride. I paused at the door. I am bringing you both. I said, if they want a family meeting, they are going to get one, but they are going to realize that my definition of family has changed. I changed into a pair of dark jeans, a black silk blouse, and my sharpest blazer. I put on boots with a heavy heel. I scrubbed the bridal makeup off my face and pulled my hair back into a tight, severe ponytail. When I walked back into the living room, Ethan was waiting. He had changed, too, into a dark sweater and jeans. He looked ready for a fight. Tessa was packing a small bag. Voice recorder, she said, tapping her pocket, backup battery. And I texted my editor. If I do not check in by 9 o'clock, she sends a patrol car to the club. You are serious? I asked. Deadly, Tessa said. Your father called in a bomb threat. Grace, we are past polite society rules. We walked out to the car. The sun had set, and the streetlights were casting long, orange shadows on the pavement. The drive to the Greywick Club took 20 minutes. We turned off the main road onto the winding, tree-lined driveway that led to the clubhouse. The building was massive, a sprawling stone structure that looked like a castle. It was lit up like a fortress against the night sky. We pulled up to the valet. The attendant looked surprised to see a 10-year-old sedan instead of the usual luxury SUVs. Name? He asked. Grace Martin? I said. He checked a list. Ah, yes. You are expected in the library wing. I stepped out of the car. The air here smelled of expensive cologne and manicured grass. Ethan took my hand. His grip was iron. Ready? He asked. No, I said honestly. But I walked toward the heavy wooden doors anyway. We entered the lobby. It was silent, plush, and intimidating. Oil paintings of old men stared down from the walls. A hostess approached us. Ms. Martin? She asked. Yes, they are waiting for you in the Cypress Room. She led us down a long corridor lined with trophies. I could hear the murmur of voices coming from behind a set of double doors at the end of the hall. She reached for the handle. Wait, I said. She paused. I took a deep breath. I looked at Ethan. I looked at Tessa. They are going to try to separate us. I said, do not let them. We are glued to you, Tessa said. I nodded. Open it, I said to the hostess. She opened the doors. I walked in. The room was dimly lit, smelling of leather and cigar smoke. There was a long mahogany table in the center. Sitting around it were the people who were supposed to be cheering for me today. Aunt Sylvia sat at the far end, her face pinched and tight. My two cousins, Mark and Sarah, sat next to her, looking at their laps. Colin was there. He was sitting in a chair against the wall, looking pale and sick. He didn't look up when I entered, and at the head of the table, where my father should have been, sat a woman I did not know. She was older, perhaps 60, with steel-gray hair cut in a sharp bob. She wore a suit that probably cost more than my car. She had a file open in front of her. She looked up as we entered. Her eyes were cool. Assessing. Grace, Aunt Sylvia said, standing up. Her voice was high and nervous. You brought people. We said come alone. I ignored her. I looked at the woman at the head of the table. Where is my father? I asked. The woman closed the file. She folded her hands on top of it. Your father is unavailable. she said. Her voice was smooth, cultured, and utterly devoid of warmth. I am Marla Klein, she continued. I am the attorney for the Martin Family Trust, and we have a great deal to discuss before the midnight deadline. Midnight deadline? I asked. She smiled, a thin, tight expression that didn't reach her eyes. Yes, she said, the directive must be signed today, or, as your aunt warned you, things will become very complicated for everyone. She looked at Ethan, then at Tessa. I suggest your friends wait in the car, she said. What we have to discuss regarding your mother's estate is highly confidential. I pulled out a chair and sat down. Ethan sat on my right. Tessa sat on my left. They stay, I said. Marla Klein stared at me. I stared back. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the daughter asking for permission. I was the beneficiary asking for an accounting. Fine, Marla said, opening the file again. But be warned, the truth is not always polite. Lay it on the table, I said, and let us see who flinches first. The Cypress Room at the Greywick Club was designed to intimidate. The walls were lined with oil portraits of men who looked like they had never smiled in their lives, and the air was thick with the scent of lemon polish and aggressive silence. I sat at the mahogany table, my hands resting flat on the wood to hide the fact that they wanted to curl into fists. Across from me, my family looked less like relatives and more like a jury that had already decided on a guilty verdict. Aunt Sylvia was vibrating with nerves. She kept smoothing the front of her skirt, her eyes darting between me and the door, as if she expected the police to burst in. My cousins, Mark and Sarah, looked like they would rather be anywhere else in the world. Mark was staring at his cuticles, and Sarah was aggressively examining the molding on the ceiling. And then there was Colin. My brother sat slumped in a leather wingback chair, his tie loosened, his face pale and clammy. He looked like a man who had been awake for 3 days. When I looked at him, he flinched, shifting his gaze to the carpet, but the center of gravity in the room was the stranger. Marla Klein sat at the head of the table with the stillness of a predator. She did not fidget. She did not look away. She had a file folder open in front of her, and her manicured hands were clasped on top of it. I am glad you came, Grace, Marla said. Her voice was low, modulated, and utterly professional. I know today has been distressing. I repeated. My father didn't show up to walk me down the aisle. A bomb threat was called in on my wedding. My family ghosted me. And now I am being summoned to a back room at a country club like a delinquent teenager. Distressing is not the word I would use. Marla offered a thin, practiced smile. We are here to help you navigate a very difficult situation, she said. I specialize in crisis management for high-net-worth families. I help families avoid disasters. I leaned forward. Where is my father? Your father is missing, Sylvia blurted out. She sounded breathless. He is gone. Grace, we do not know where he is. He is under an immense amount of pressure, and he just snapped. I looked at Sylvia. Her eyes were wide and wet. But there was something rehearsed about her panic. It was too loud, too performed. Missing? I asked. Mr. Henderson saw him leaving his office 5 hours ago with a banker. That does not sound like a man who snapped. That sounds like a man running an errand. He is not answering his phone, Sylvia cried. He is not at the house. He is gone. Grace. And he left us to clean up this mess. What mess? Ethan asked. His voice was calm, but it had a hard edge to it. Marla Klein turned her gaze to Ethan. She looked him up and down, assessing his sweater, his jeans, his watch. It was a look of dismissal. Mr. Hale, she said, this is a private matter regarding the Martin family estate. I am staying, Ethan said. Marla sighed, a small sound of disappointment. Very well, she said. She slid a document across the polished table toward me. It was a thick stack of paper, stapled at the top. The title page was stark white. Protective Asset Directive. What is this? I asked. It is a shield, Marla said. Given your father's sudden disappearance and the instability of the current situation, the family has agreed that we need to secure the assets immediately. This document places certain funds, specifically those tied to your mother's original bequest, into a restricted vehicle. I looked at the paper. Restricted vehicle. For my benefit? I asked. Of course, Marla said smoothly. It protects the principal. It ensures that no one can access the funds without a two-party authorization. I flipped to the second page. I scanned the legal jargon. Irrevocable, sole administrator, discretionary disbursement. I stopped at the bottom of page 3. Administrator, Randall Martin. I looked up. You want me to sign control of my mother's money over to the man who just abandoned me at the altar? It is a formality, Sylvia said quickly. Your father is the only one who knows the accounts. Grace, he has handled it for years. We just need to formalize it so the bank doesn't freeze everything. I flipped to the last page. There was a date stamp next to the signature line. October 14th. Today, my wedding day. I looked at the time on the grandfather clock in the corner. It was 7:30 in the evening. This has to be signed today, doesn't it? I asked. Marla did not blink. It is the end of the fiscal quarter for the trust. She lied. It is a deadline. No, I said. I felt the pieces click together. A sharp, metallic sound in my mind. The wedding wasn't the target. The wedding was just the clock. You didn't stop the wedding because you hate Ethan. I said, you stopped it because if I got married today, my legal status would change. I looked at Tessa. She was scribbling furiously in her notebook. Tessa looked up. If she gets married, she is no longer a dependent in the eyes of the original trust. Tessa said, the control likely reverts to her, or at the very least, her husband gains legal standing to demand an audit. Marla's expression tightened. A microscopic crack in the mask. You are confused. Grace, Marla said, this is about protection. Your father is trying to save you from making a mistake that could cost you your inheritance. What inheritance? I demanded. I slammed my hand down on the table, making Sylvia jump. My father told me there was nothing left. He told me it was all gone. So what exactly are you protecting? Silence filled the room, heavy, suffocating. Then, a sound from the corner, a sob. It was Colin. He had his head in his hands. His shoulders were shaking. Colin, I said. He looked up. His face was wet with tears. He looked young, terrified, and completely broken. Tell her. Colin, I said. Colin, be quiet. Sylvia hissed. Tell me, I shouted. It is gone. Grace, Colin whispered. What is gone? The money. Colin said. It is not sitting in a vault. He used it. I stared at him. Used it for what? For the council, Colin said. He wiped his nose with the back of his hand. The Family Renewal Council. He has been pulling money out of Mom's trust for 5 years. He called them loans. He said he was going to pay it back. He said it was just for cash flow. I felt the blood drain from my face. My father, the moral pillar of the community, had been embezzling from his dead wife's estate to fund his vanity project. He told me it was legal, Colin said, his voice rising in panic. He showed me papers. He said as long as he was the trustee, he could invest it however he wanted. But then the audit notice came. Audit? Tessa asked sharply. The state grant, Colin said. He looked at Tessa. The council applied for a state renewal grant, a big one, $2 million. But they have to show matching funds. They have to show that the organization is solvent, and it is not. Tessa said, it was a statement, not a question. Colin shook his head. No, the accounts are empty. He moved the money around to make it look like it was there, but he needs to move it back before the auditors arrive next week. And he can't move it back, I said, realizing the horror of the math. If I get married and the trust transfers to me, Colin nodded. If you marry Ethan, the trust automatically dissolves and the assets, what is supposed to be there, transfer to your name. You would get a bank statement. You would see the zero balance, and he would go to prison. Ethan said. The room went dead silent. Sylvia stood up. She was trembling with rage. How dare you? She spat at Ethan. You come into this family with your landscaping business and your debts, and you throw around accusations? She turned to me. He is a gold digger. Grace, look at him. Why do you think he wants to marry you so fast? He knows about the money. He has debts. We checked. He has a truck loan and a business line of credit. He is looking for a payday. I looked at Ethan. He was sitting perfectly still. He didn't defend himself. He didn't shout back. He just watched Sylvia with a look of profound pity. I have a business loan because I built a company from the ground up. Ethan said calmly, I pay it every month. I have never asked Grace for a dime. He has a temper, Sylvia shouted. We have heard stories. He got into a fight at a bar 3 years ago. I stood up. Stop it, I said. My voice was ice. You are pathetic. Sylvia, you are trying to paint him as a monster to justify what you did. You terrorized me today. You called in a bomb threat. You broke my heart, all to cover up a crime. I turned to Marla Klein. And you? I said, you are not protecting me. You are protecting a thief. Marla closed the file folder. She did not look rattled. She looked bored. I would choose my words carefully. Ms. Martin, she said, slander is a slippery slope. She folded her hands. Here is the reality. Grace, if you do not sign this directive tonight, the structure of the estate remains vulnerable. If you proceed with a marriage to Mr. Hale, certain protections fall away. The privacy of the family accounts will be compromised. She paused, letting the words hang in the air. And if that happens, she said softly, the fallout will not just hit your father, it will hit everyone. Your brother is on the board of the council. Your aunt is a signatory. If the dominoes fall, Grace, they all fall. I looked at Colin. He was staring at me, pleading with his eyes. Save me. That was the leverage. It wasn't just money. It was my brother. My father had implicated Colin to ensure I wouldn't call the police. I looked at the document again. The Protective Asset Directive. If I signed it, I gave Randall control forever. I sanctioned the theft. I became an accomplice in my own robbery. And if I didn't sign it, I destroyed my family. Are you threatening me or informing me? I asked Marla. Marla smiled. It was the coldest thing I had ever seen. I am zealously advocating for my client, she said. Who is your client? I asked. Me or my father? The family. Grace, she said. The family is the client. I looked at Ethan. He nodded. A tiny, almost imperceptible movement. Whatever you choose, I am here. I looked at Tessa. She was holding her pen like a weapon. I reached out and took the document. Sylvia let out a breath she had been holding. Colin slumped in relief. I held the heavy stack of paper in my hands. I felt the texture of it. Then, I ripped it in half. The sound was loud in the quiet room. Rip. I dropped the pieces on the mahogany table. I am not signing anything. I said. Sylvia gasped. Grace, you are making a mistake. No, I said. The mistake was thinking you could scare me into this. I looked at Colin. I love you. Colin, I said, but I'm not going to set myself on fire to keep you warm. Not anymore. I turned to Marla. Tell my father he missed the deadline, I said. I turned and walked toward the door. Grace, Sylvia shrieked, you walk out that door, and you are on your own. Do you hear me? No one will help you. I stopped at the door. I looked back at them. The aunt who chose fear, the brother who chose cowardice, and the lawyer who chose greed. I have been on my own for a long time. Sylvia, I said, I just finally realized it. I pushed the doors open and walked out. The night air outside the club was sharp and cold. It felt like oxygen after drowning. We got into the car in silence. Ethan started the engine, but he didn't put it in gear. He looked at me. Are you okay? He asked. No, I said. I am furious. Where to? Tessa asked from the back seat. Police station? No, I said. Not yet. We don't have enough proof. All we have is Colin's word, and he will recant the second a lawyer gets to him. We need paper. I stared out the windshield at the dark driveway. Marla said something. I murmured. She said protections fall away. She kept talking about the original bequest. The trust. Tessa said. Yes, but why now? Why is it suddenly an emergency today? If Randall has been stealing for 5 years, why is today the breaking point? Because of the auditors. Ethan said, yes, but there is something else. I said, I can feel it. There is something about the marriage itself. Something in the original documents that triggers a change. I turned to look at them. I need to go to the storage unit. The storage unit? Ethan asked. Grace, it is 9 o'clock at night. I know. I said, but when Mom died, Randall threw everything of hers into a unit on the outskirts of town. He said he couldn't bear to look at it. He wanted to throw it away, but I begged him to keep it. I pulled my keychain out of my purse. There was a small, brass key on a separate ring. I had carried it for 5 years, never using it. He hated that I kept this key. I said, he asked me for it a dozen times. He said I was holding on to the past. I gripped the key. He wasn't grieving. I said, he was hiding evidence. Drive. Ethan, please. The Safekeep storage facility was a grid of corrugated metal and fluorescent lights on the edge of the industrial district. It was a place for things people didn't want but couldn't destroy. We found Unit 402 down a long, echoing concrete corridor. The air smelled of dust and damp cardboard. My hands were shaking as I fit the brass key into the padlock. It was stiff with age. I had to wiggle it, fighting the mechanism. Here, let me, Ethan said. No, I said, I have to do it. With a sharp click, the lock popped open. I slid the metal door up. It rumbled loudly, the sound bouncing off the metal walls. Ethan clicked on a flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness. The unit was small, 10 by 10. It was filled with the detritus of my mother's life, her gardening tools, boxes of old clothes, a vanity table with a cracked mirror. It was a graveyard of the woman she had been before she married Randall, and the shadow she became after. I walked in. The dust motes danced in the flashlight beam. What are we looking for? Tessa asked, stepping gingerly over a box of books. I don't know. I said, anything. Papers. Letters. We started opening boxes. Most of it was mundane. Receipts for groceries from 1999. Christmas cards. A collection of porcelain figurines she had loved. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. I found a box in the back corner, buried under a heavy wool coat. It was a simple cardboard filing box, taped shut. But it was the writing on the side that stopped my heart. For Grace, it said in thick black marker, if they try to hurry you. I froze. Ethan, I whispered. He came over, shining the light on the box. If they try to hurry you, it was a message from the grave, a warning sent 5 years into the future. I ripped the tape off. Inside, there were no porcelain figurines. There were file folders, neatly labeled. I pulled the first one out. Silver Ridge Trust Services. Correspondence, 2018. I opened it. It was a letter addressed to my mother. Dear Mrs. Martin, regarding your inquiry about the irrevocability of the Grantham Trust, we confirm that upon your death, the assets remain in trust for your daughter, Grace Elizabeth Martin. However, per the 1995 amendment, Randall Martin retains trusteeship until Grace reaches the age of 35 or enters into a legal marriage, whichever comes first. I gasped. There it is, Tessa said, leaning over my shoulder. The trigger. Enters into a legal marriage. If I married Ethan, Randall lost his job as trustee immediately, automatically. That is why he couldn't let you marry, Ethan said. He didn't just need time to put the money back. He needed to stay in power to hide that it was gone. I kept reading. There was more. A handwritten note, clipped to the back of the letter. My mother's handwriting. The loops were soft, shaky. It must have been written near the end, when the sickness was taking her. My darling Grace, if you are reading this, it means Randall chose control over love. I am so sorry. He made me sign things. Grace, when I was sick, he told me it was to protect you. But I called the bank. I called the lawyers. I found out what he was doing. He is building a monument to himself with your grandmother's money. The council. It is all him. He wants to be important more than he wants to be a father. I tried to change the will, But he has power of attorney. He watches me. So I am hiding this. I am hiding the truth where he won't look. With my old things. He never looks at my things. Do not let him bully you. You are the owner. You have always been the owner. You have to authorize everything. If money moved, he forged it. Or he tricked you. Be brave, my girl. Pick the man who loves you, not the man who owns you. Love. Mom. I sat down on the dusty concrete floor. The letter shook in my hands. She knew. She knew what he was, and she knew what he would do to me. He forged it, I whispered, or he tricked you. I thought about the simple signature he wanted. I thought about the protective asset directive Marla Klein had pushed across the table tonight. They weren't just trying to maintain the status quo. They were trying to get me to retroactively authorize 5 years of theft. Grace? Ethan asked softly. He knelt down beside me. I looked up at him. My vision was blurred, but not with tears, with rage. Cold, clear, absolute rage. He didn't just ruin my wedding, I said. My voice was steady. He stole my mother's last wish. He stole her protection, and he used my brother to do it. I stood up. I clutched the box to my chest like a shield. Tessa, I said. Yes? Does your editor have a contact at the district attorney's office? Tessa grinned in the darkness. It was a feral, dangerous smile. I have the personal cell number of the assistant DA, she said. Call him. I said, tonight? Right now. I said, we are not waiting for the morning. We are not waiting for the auditors. I looked at the box in my arms. My father wanted a war. I said, he wanted to blow up my life so he could keep his secrets. I walked toward the door of the storage unit, stepping out of the dusty past and into the cold, sharp night. Well, he got his wish. I said, the war starts now. The office of Crowell and Rusk was everything the Greywick Club was not, located in a strip mall between a bakery and a dry cleaner. It smelled faintly of yeast and old carpet. There were no oil paintings of ancestors, only framed diplomas and a dying ficus tree in the corner. Daniel Crowell was a man who looked like he ironed his socks. He was in his late 50s, wearing a cardigan over a button-down shirt, and he read documents with a slowness that was agonizing. He had been recommended by the assistant district attorney, Tessa's contact, as someone who understood trust law and, more importantly, knew how to keep his mouth shut. I sat in the faux leather chair, my hands clasped in my lap. Ethan was next to me, his knee bouncing with a restless energy he could not suppress. Tessa was pacing near the window, checking her phone every 30 seconds. Daniel turned the page of the Protective Asset Directive, the document I had torn in half and then taped back together so he could read it. He adjusted his glasses. He hummed. Well, he said finally, this is aggressive. Aggressive how? I asked. He took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. Ms. Martin, in my 30 years of practice, I have seen many documents designed to protect assets. This is not one of them. This is a document designed to strip mine rights. He tapped the paper with a pen. See this clause here? Power of appointment. If you had signed this, you would not just be freezing the funds, you would be granting your father, as the administrator, the right to reassign the beneficiary status of the trust to any entity he deems prudent for the preservation of the capital. Meaning? Ethan asked. Meaning he could legally transfer every cent from your mother's trust into his own account, or into a non-profit he controls, and you would have no legal recourse to stop him. You would be signing a permission slip for him to rob you. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. It was one thing to suspect it. It was another to hear it confirmed by a professional. And the original trust? I asked. The papers I found in the storage unit? Daniel pulled the stack of yellowed papers toward him. He smiled slightly. Now, this, he said. This is ironclad. Your mother had good advice when she set this up. It is a Grantham Legacy Trust. Very old school. He looked me in the eye. Grace, you are the sole required signer for any transfer out of the reserve account. Not your father, not the bank, you. The moment you turn 30, The administrative oversight became a formality. The moment you marry, that oversight vanishes entirely. So he can't move the money without me? I asked. Legally? No, Daniel said, but that does not mean he hasn't tried. He pointed to a clause on the last page. The bank requires physical verification for transfers over $10,000. But for collateralization? For using the money to back a loan? That is a gray area. If he has the original certificates and he is listed as the trustee, a less than diligent lender might accept his signature alone. Collateralization. I repeated. The word tasted like metal. He didn't just spend the money. I said, he leveraged it. It is a possibility. Daniel said, but here's the good news. If he leveraged it without your consent, that is fraud. And if you marry Mr. Hale, you become the absolute owner. The bank will have to notify you of any liens. The house of cards falls down. He leaned forward. My advice? Do not sign anything. Do not answer his calls. And document every single interaction. If he approaches you again, you call me. I stood up. I felt steadier than I had in 24 hours. Thank you. Daniel. He stood up and shook my hand. His grip was dry and firm. One more thing. Ms. Martin, he said. People who write documents like this, they do not usually stop because you say no. They stop because they are forced to. Be careful. We left the law office and drove straight to Silver Ridge Trust Services. It was nearly noon, and the sky had turned a flat, oppressive white. Silver Ridge was located in the financial district, in a glass tower that looked down on the harbor. It was the kind of place that whispered money rather than shouted it. The lobby was silent marble, and the receptionist looked like she had been genetically engineered to be intimidating. I walked up to the desk. I was wearing my jeans and blazer from the night before, but I held my head high. I am Grace Martin. I said, I received a delivery notice yesterday regarding an account held here. The receptionist typed my name into her computer. Her eyebrows shot up. Oh, she said. Ms. Martin? Yes, Mr. Sterling has been trying to reach you. She picked up a phone and whispered something. A moment later, a man in a sharp blue suit emerged from a side door. He looked harried. Ms. Martin, he said, extending a hand. I am Arthur Sterling, Senior Account Manager. Thank you for coming in. We have had some concerns. He led us into a glass-walled conference room. He did not offer us water. He sat down and opened a digital file on a tablet. We sent the courier yesterday because we flagged some irregular activity on the Grantham Reserve account. He said, What kind of activity? I asked. Access attempts. Mr. Sterling said, Yesterday morning, at approximately 3 a.m., someone attempted to access the online portal for the trust. They had the username. They had the account number. And? Tessa prompted. And they failed the security questions. Mr. Sterling said, 3 times. The system locked the account automatically. That is our protocol. I looked at Ethan. 3 a.m. That was the missed call. I said, the unknown number on my phone. It was them. Ethan said, they were trying to get in, and they couldn't guess the password. Mr. Sterling looked uncomfortable. The security question was, specific. He said, what was the name of your first pet? The user guessed Rover, then Max, then King. I let out a short, bitter laugh. Those were my father's dogs. I said, he always had golden retrievers. Mr. Sterling nodded. The correct answer, I assume, is not one of those? No. I said, my first pet was a hamster named Barnaby. My mother bought him for me when I was 6. My father hated him. He made me keep the cage in the garage. He didn't know. I whispered. He didn't know the answer because he never cared enough to remember. Mr. Sterling cleared his throat. After the account was locked, he said, we received a fax. It was a request to wire the entire balance of the reserve, approximately $400,000, to an account held by the Harbor Point Family Renewal Council. The signature on the fax. Well, it purported to be yours. Purported? Tessa asked. It was a photocopy. Mr. Sterling said, and it looked grafted, like it had been cut and pasted from another document. We rejected the transfer immediately and sent the courier to verify your identity. I felt a wave of nausea. He had tried to rob me while I was sleeping on my wedding day, and when the digital lock kept him out, he tried to forge my name. Mr. Sterling. I said, I want to be very clear. I did not authorize that transfer. I will never authorize a transfer to that organization. I understand. Mr. Sterling said. He tapped the tablet. I have flagged the account. In-person verification only. No funds move unless you are sitting in this chair. Showing me your ID. Thank you, I said. And Miss Martin? Mr. Sterling added as we stood to leave. Yes, the person who sent the fax. They called afterwards, about an hour before your wedding was scheduled to begin. They were extremely agitated. They screamed at my assistant. What did they say? I asked. Mr. Sterling hesitated. They said, tell her she is running out of time. Tell her the auditors are coming. I walked out of the building into the cold wind. The auditors. I said to Ethan and Tessa, that is the deadline. It isn't the wedding. The wedding was just the obstacle. The auditors are the executioners. We spent the afternoon at Tessa's apartment, turning it into a war room. We drank stale coffee and ate takeout while Tessa built a timeline on a whiteboard. 5 years ago. Mom dies. Trust activates. 4 years ago. Randall starts borrowing from the trust. 2 weeks ago. Council applies for state grant. Today. Auditors due. Account empty. It was a classic Ponzi scheme. Just writ small and kept in the family. He was robbing Peter to pay Paul, and I was Peter. At 10 o'clock that night, my phone buzzed. I looked at the screen. Voicemail from Dad. I stared at it. He hadn't called. He had just left a message directly. Bypassing the ring. Play it, Ethan said. I pressed speaker. The voice that filled the room was not the booming, confident baritone of Randall Martin. It was thin, cracked. Grace, he said, I need you to listen. You have to trust me. I know how this looks, but there are things you don't understand. He paused. I heard the sound of wind in the background. Cars passing. Don't marry him. Grace, please, just give me 2 days. I can fix this. But I need to see you. Come alone. To the shoreline overpass. 11 p.m. Just you. If you bring anyone, I can't protect you. The message ended. I can't protect you. It was the same language he always used. He was the protector. I was the helpless child. I am going. I said, absolutely not, Ethan said. He stood up, knocking his chair back. Grace, are you listening to yourself? He sounds unstable. He is desperate. You are not meeting him under a bridge in the middle of the night. I have to. I said, I have to look him in the eye. Why? Ethan asked. We know what he did. We have the proof. We can go to the police right now. Because he is my father, I shouted. The room went silent. I felt tears stinging my eyes. Hot and angry, because for 33 years. I thought he was just hard on me because he wanted me to be better. I said, my voice shaking, I thought he was tough because he loved me. I need to see him. I need to see if there is anything left of the man I thought he was, or if it was all just a transaction. Ethan looked at me. The anger drained out of his face, replaced by a deep sadness. Okay, he said softly. Okay. But you are not going alone, Tessa said. He said, come alone. I said, he lied. Tessa said, he lies about everything. We are coming. We will stay back, Ethan said. We will park down the road. We will be close enough to run if you scream, but far enough back that he won't see us. I looked at them, my team, the family that actually showed up. Okay, I said, let's go. The shoreline overpass was a desolate stretch of concrete that spanned the industrial canal. At night, it was a place of shadows and sodium vapor lights. The fog had rolled in again, thick and yellow, obscuring the water below. I parked my car at the south end of the bridge. I could see Ethan's headlights cut quickly in the distance before going dark. He was there, watching. I got out of the car. The wind whipped my hair across my face. It smelled of brine and diesel. I walked to the center of the overpass. There was a single bench there, facing the water. A figure was sitting on it. He was hunched over, wearing a heavy coat, his head in his hands. "Dad?" I called out. The wind tore the word from my lips. The figure stood up. It wasn't my father. It was Colin. "Grace," he said. He looked terrible. His eyes were red-rimmed, his skin gray. He looked like he had aged 10 years in 2 days. "Where is he?" I asked. I stopped 5 feet away from him. I didn't move to hug him. He couldn't come. Colin said, He is hiding." "Grace, he can't be seen." "Hiding from who?" I asked. "The police? Me?" "From everyone," Colin said. He sat back down heavily on the bench. "He is at the cabin. He sent me to get the signature." I stared at my brother. "He sent you," I said, like an errand boy. "He is desperate." "Grace!" Colin cried. His voice cracked. "You don't understand. The auditors are coming on Monday. If the account isn't replenished, it is over. So he wants me to sign the directive." I said, "He wants me to give him the money to fill the hole he dug. It is not just a hole." "Grace," Colin said. He looked up at me. His eyes were wide with fear. "He didn't just spend the cash. What did he do?" I asked. "He used the reserve account as collateral." Colin whispered. I felt the ground shift under my feet. "Collateral for what?" "For a private loan." Colin said, "From a developer, a guy named Vinny Russo. Do you know who that is?" I shook my head. "He is a shark." "Grace, he lends money to people who can't get it from banks. Dad borrowed $500,000 from him 3 years ago to expand the council's headquarters. He put up Mom's trust as the guarantee." I felt sick. "And now?" I asked. "And now Russo is calling the loan," Colin said, "because he heard rumors about the audit. He wants his money. Today," he looked at me, pleading, "if you don't sign the directive, Grace, Dad can't refinance. He can't pay Russo, and if he defaults, Russo takes the collateral, but he can't." I said, "It is my money." Colin laughed, a high, hysterical sound. "Russo doesn't care whose money it is. He has a piece of paper with Dad's signature as trustee. He will take the account. He will drain it. And then the auditors will come, and they will see zero balance, and Dad will go to prison for fraud. And Russo might do something worse than prison." I looked out at the dark water. The waves were crashing against the concrete pilings below. "So that is it," I said. "The bomb threat, the lawyer, the gaslighting. It wasn't about protecting me. It was about protecting Randall from a loan shark. He is scared for his life." "Grace," Colin said, "he is your father. Doesn't that mean anything?" I looked at Colin. I looked at the brother who had stood by and watched me cry in that bridal suite. Knowing exactly why it was happening, it means he made a choice. I said, "Grace, he chose a building over his daughter." I said, "He chose his reputation over my happiness, and now he wants me to pay for it." I reached into my pocket. I pulled out a folded piece of paper. "Here," I said. Colin's face lit up with hope. He reached for it. "Is this it? Did you sign it?" I dropped the paper on the bench next to him. "It is a copy of the restraining order I'm filing tomorrow." I said. Colin froze. "And tell Dad something for me." I said, "Tell him I am not paying his debts, not the money, and not the emotional ones." "Grace, you can't!" Colin shouted. He stood up, grabbing my arm. "You are killing him. If you walk away, you are killing him." I looked at his hand on my arm. "Let go of me." Colin, he didn't let go. His grip tightened. There was a desperation in his eyes that was dangerous. "Just sign the paper. Grace, we can send it digitally. I have the tablet. Just sign it and this all goes away." I said, "Let go." I shoved him. He stumbled back. Suddenly, headlights flooded the bridge. Tires screeched. Ethan was there. He was out of the car before it even stopped rolling. "Get away from her!" Ethan roared. He slammed into Colin, shoving him back against the railing. Colin threw his hands up, terrified. I didn't mean it. Colin yelled. I was just trying to make her understand. Ethan held him there, pinned against the concrete. Ethan was breathing hard. His face contorted with fury. Touch her again, Ethan snarled, and I will throw you over this rail. Ethan, stop, I said. I walked over to them. I put a hand on Ethan's shoulder. He is not worth it, I said. Ethan stared at Colin for a long second, then released him. Colin slumped against the railing, gasping for air. Go back to the cabin. Colin, I said. My voice was calm. It was the calm of someone who has nothing left to lose. Tell Dad the bank is closed. We turned and walked back to the cars. I didn't look back. I heard Colin sobbing on the bridge, a lonely, pathetic sound that was swallowed by the fog. We drove back to the apartment in silence. The adrenaline was fading, leaving a dull ache in my bones. I had my answer. My father wasn't missing. He was hiding from the consequences of his own greed. And he was willing to sacrifice me to save himself. It hurt. It hurt like a physical wound, a tearing in my chest where my love for him used to be. But it was a clean pain. It was the pain of cauterization. The hope was gone, and with it, the confusion. We walked into the apartment. It was past midnight. I need a drink, Tessa said, heading for the kitchen. I sat down at my desk and opened my laptop. I wanted to check my work schedule for the next day. I needed normalcy. I needed to remember that I had a job, a life, outside of this madness. I opened my email. My inbox was full. Subject: urgent. HR meeting. Subject: ethics violation inquiry. Subject: anonymous complaint. I clicked on the first one. It was from the director of HR at Harbor Point Children's Health Outreach. Dear Grace, we have received multiple anonymous complaints regarding your financial conduct. Allegations have been made suggesting that you are financially compromised and that this may affect your ability to manage donor funds. Given the seriousness of these claims, we are placing you on administrative leave pending an investigation. Please report to my office tomorrow at 9 a.m. I stared at the screen. They didn't stop at the wedding. They were coming for my job. Ethan, I said. He came over. He read the screen. Oh my God. He said, they are nuking everything. It is scorched earth. I said, if I don't sign, they destroy my credibility. They make me unhireable. They make me look like a thief so that when I accuse them of theft, no one believes me. Tessa walked in with 3 glasses of whiskey. She saw our faces. What now? She asked. I turned the laptop around. Tessa read the email. She didn't look shocked. She looked angry. This is the playbook, she said. Discredit the accuser. They are terrified. Grace, they are throwing everything they have at you. I took the glass of whiskey from her hand. I took a sip. It burned, hot and grounding. I looked at the two of them. I am done running. I said. I picked up my phone. I opened the camera. What are you doing? Ethan asked. I am taking a selfie, I said. I snapped a picture of myself. No makeup, hair messy, eyes hard and clear. I opened my social media. I hadn't posted anything since the getting ready post yesterday morning. I typed a caption. On my wedding day, not a single family member showed up, not even my father. At first, I thought it was a tragedy. Now I know it was a business decision. The truth is coming, and I'm bringing receipts. I hovered my thumb over the post button. Wait, Tessa said. I looked at her. Don't post it yet, she said. Why? Because if you post it now, it is just drama, she said. It is a Facebook rant. They can dismiss it as an emotional outburst from a jilted bride. She tapped the table. We need to make it undeniable, she said. We need the paper trail. We need the recording of Colin admitting the fraud. We need the bank records. She smiled. A sharp, dangerous smile. We don't just tell them, Grace. We show them. We wait for the HR meeting. We let them think they have you cornered. And then we drop the hammer. I looked at the phone. I looked at the caption. You are right. I said, I saved the draft. Tomorrow, I said, I go into that HR meeting. I clear my name. And then? Ethan asked. And then, I said, looking at the dark window where the city lights of Harbor Point glittered like false promises. And then we finish the wedding. What do you mean? Ethan asked. I mean we gather the guests. I said, the ones who matter. We go back to the beginning. I looked at Ethan. I am going to expose them. I said, but I'm not going to do it in a courtroom where they can hide behind lawyers. I am going to do it in public. I am going to do it on the stage they built for themselves. I am going to throw a party, I said, and everyone is invited, especially my father. Ethan smiled. It was the first time he had really smiled in 2 days. I love a good party, he said. I closed the laptop. Get some sleep, I said. We have a hell of a day tomorrow. I walked to the bedroom, leaving the ghosts of my family behind in the dark. I didn't need them anymore. I had the truth. And come tomorrow, everyone else would have it too. The conference room at Harbor Point Children's Health Outreach was a space I knew well. I had spent countless hours there negotiating vendor contracts and planning vaccination drives. It was a room of beige walls and sensible carpet, a place where good work was done by tired, well-meaning people. Today, however, it felt like a courtroom. I sat across from Karen, the director of human resources. She looked pained. Karen had known me for 4 years. She had attended my engagement party. But today, she had a manila folder in front of her that contained a dozen anonymous complaints about my character. Grace, Karen said gently, you know I have to follow protocol when we receive allegations of financial impropriety, especially regarding someone with purchasing power. We have to investigate. I understand. Karen, I said. My voice was steady. I had spent the morning practicing this tone in the mirror. It was not the voice of a defensive employee. It was the voice of a woman who had the receipts. I reached into my bag and pulled out my own binder. It was 3 inches thick. These emails came from 3 different IP addresses. I said, sliding the binder toward her. But if you look at the timestamps, they were sent within 4 minutes of each other. 2 of them use identical phrasing regarding fiduciary negligence. That is a very specific legal term. Karen, it is not the language of a disgruntled coworker. It is the language of a lawyer. Karen opened the binder. She scanned the highlighted text. I also want you to look at the dates. I continued. The first email arrived exactly 1 hour after my wedding ceremony was halted by a false bomb threat. The second arrived while I was meeting with my family's attorney, who was attempting to coerce me into signing a retroactive financial directive. I folded my hands on the table. This is not a workplace issue. Karen, this is a coordinated harassment campaign designed to pressure me into a private financial decision regarding my late mother's estate. I am being targeted, and the people targeting me are using this organization's compliance policies as a weapon. Karen looked up. Her eyes were wide. A bomb threat? She asked. The one at the chapel? Yes, I said, and if you suspend me based on these anonymous emails, you are not protecting the organization. You are participating in the harassment. I sat back. I am asking you to log these complaints as what they are. Malicious interference. I am happy to submit to a full audit of my work accounts. You will find that every penny is accounted for. But I will not be bullied out of my job because my father is having a financial crisis. Karen closed the folder. She looked at me for a long moment. Then she nodded. I believe you. Grace, she said, I will flag these as spam and harassment. Your status is active. Just keep me posted? If this spills over, it won't. I said, standing up, I am finishing it. I walked out of the office building and into the bright, hard sunlight of the parking lot. I felt a trembling in my knees that I hadn't let show in the room. I had saved my job, but the victory felt precarious. They were attacking on every front. I got into my car and drove to Tessa's apartment. When I walked in, the air smelled of burnt coffee and ozone. Tessa was standing at her wall of index cards, connecting lines with red yarn like a caricature of a conspiracy theorist. But her expression was grimly serious. You were right, she said without turning around. About what? I asked, dropping my bag on the sofa. The network, Tessa said. She tapped a card labeled Family Renewal Council. I started digging into the board members. She said, "It is a who's who of Harbor Point's old guard, but look at the connections." She pointed to a name, Robert Vance. "Relation?" I asked. "Distant cousin to me." "Unfortunately," Tessa said, "but more importantly, he is the vice president of commercial lending at Harbor Trust. That is the bank where the council holds its operating accounts. And look at this name," Tessa said, pointing to another card, Linda Halloway. "She is on the fundraising committee. Her husband is a senior grant officer for the state, the exact department that is sending the auditors next week." I stared at the web of red string. "It is an ecosystem," I whispered. "Exactly," Tessa said. "Your father didn't just borrow money from a loan shark. He built a system where everyone scratched everyone else's back. The banker approved the shaky loans because he sat on the board. The grant officer looked the other way because his wife was organizing the galas. And if the audit happens," I said, realizing the scope of it, "if the audit happens and the accounts are empty," Tessa said, "it is not just Randall who goes down. The banker loses his license. The grant officer gets investigated for corruption. That is why the pressure is so high." I said, "It is not just my father. I am threatening the entire social hierarchy of this town." My phone rang. It was Daniel Crowell. "Grace," he said, "I have drafted the formal notice for Silver Ridge. Can you come by and sign it? We need to file it before the bank closes today. I am on my way." I said, signing the notice at Daniel's office felt like turning a key in a heavy iron door. The document was simple but devastating. It revoked all prior authorizations. It required 2 forms of identification and a thumbprint for any withdrawal. It explicitly stated that no directives signed by Randall Martin were to be honored. "This stops the bleeding," Daniel said as I put the pen down. "It creates a fortress around the assets. If they try to move a single cent now, they are committing a felony that is easily proven in court. And if they try to forge my signature again?" I asked. "They can't," Daniel said. "We have alerted the fraud department. The account is flagged high risk. If anyone even queries the balance, you get a text message." I walked out of his office feeling a strange mixture of safety and dread. I had locked the vault, but I knew that when you trap a frantic animal, that is when it becomes most dangerous. I found out how dangerous 2 hours later. I was back at my apartment, trying to eat a sandwich that tasted like sawdust. Ethan was sitting on the floor, assembling a new lock for our front door, a heavy-duty deadbolt. There was a knock. Ethan froze. He picked up the hammer. I walked to the peephole. "It is Aunt Sylvia," I said, "and Marla Klein." "Don't open it," Ethan said. "I have to." I said, "I need to see what their next move is." I opened the door, but I didn't step back. I stood in the threshold, blocking the way. "Grace," Sylvia choked out. She looked terrible. Her eyes were swollen, her face blotchy. She wasn't wearing her usual pearls. She looked like a woman who had been crying for hours. "Please," she said, "we just want to talk." Marla Klein stood behind her. The lawyer looked as pristine as ever, but there was a new tension in her jaw. "You have 5 minutes," I said. I stepped back. They walked into the living room. Sylvia saw Ethan holding the hammer and flinched. "He stays," I said. "Grace," Sylvia said. Turning to me, she reached out and grabbed my hands. Her palms were clammy. "You have to sign it," she sobbed. "Please, Grace, you don't understand. He is going to do it." "Do what?" I asked, pulling my hands away. "He sent me a text." Sylvia cried. She fumbled for her phone. "He said he can't go to prison. He said he would rather end it." She held the phone up. The message was brief. "I am sorry for everything. I can't face the shame. Take care of the family." I stared at the screen. A cold spike of adrenaline hit my chest. "He is at the cabin." Sylvia wept. "He has his hunting rifle." "Grace, you know he does. If you don't fix this, if you don't give him a way out, his blood is on your hands." I felt the room tilt. The image of my father, alone in the cabin, the gun in his hand. It was a nightmare I had never let myself imagine. "He is desperate. Ms. Martin, Marla Klein said softly. Her voice was like velvet. Men like your father, they identify wholly with their success. Without it, they see no reason to exist. You have the power to save his life. It is just a signature. I looked at Marla. I looked at her calm, calculating eyes. And then I looked at Sylvia. She was genuinely terrified. She believed it. But did I? I closed my eyes. I thought about the bomb threat. I thought about the smear campaign at my job. I thought about the Family Renewal Council and the banker and the grant officer. This was a man who had planned a terror event at his daughter's wedding. This was a man who had orchestrated a complex financial fraud for 5 years. Would a man like that kill himself? Or would he use the threat of suicide as the ultimate trump card? I opened my eyes. If you believe he is a danger to himself, I said, my voice shaking only slightly, then we need to call the police. What? Sylvia gasped. I pulled out my phone. I am calling 911. I said, I will give them the address of the cabin. They can send a crisis intervention team. No, Sylvia screamed. She lunged for me. You can't call the police. If they go out there, they will find the files. They will arrest him. I stepped back. You are kicking a hornet's nest, and I am wearing boots. I said, goodbye, Marla. I slammed the door. I locked the deadbolt. Then I dropped the phone and sank onto the floor. Grace, Ethan said. He was beside me in a second. He is not going to do it, is he? I asked. I needed him to tell me. No, Ethan said. He pulled me into his arms. No, it was a play. It was the last card in the deck. I buried my face in his sweater. They are using my love against me. I whispered, they know I love him. They are banking on it. Ethan held me tighter. That is why they are going to lose, he said. Because they think love is a weakness. They don't realize it is why you are still standing. He pulled back and looked at me. His eyes were dark with worry. I am scared. Grace. He said, I know. I said, me too. No, Ethan said. I am not scared of them. I am scared for you. I watched you with Sylvia just now. I saw you waver. You almost signed it. I didn't. I said, you almost did. Because you have spent your whole life fixing things for him. You are the one who cleans up the messes. He took my face in his hands. I need to know something. Grace, I need to know that we are not going to spend the next 20 years paying off his moral debts. I want a marriage. I don't want to be the support staff for the Randall Martin Crisis Center. I looked at him. I saw the fear behind the anger. He wasn't afraid of the fight. He was afraid of losing me to the pattern. I am not the cleanup crew. I said clearly. I kissed his palm. I am the demolition expert. I said, we are tearing it down. Ethan, all of it. And when we build something new, it will be ours. An hour later, my burner phone buzzed. It was the cheap prepaid phone Tessa had bought me, just in case my main line was compromised. It was a text from an unknown number. Meet me at the pier. Behind the old cannery. Come alone. I have proof. I showed it to Ethan. Colin? He said, it has to be. I said. We drove to the pier. The fog was back, rolling in off the Atlantic like a thick, wet blanket. Ethan and Tessa parked around the corner, keeping watch. I walked to the back of the old cannery building. Colin was standing in the shadows of a rusted shipping container. He was wearing a hoodie. The hood pulled up. He looked like a fugitive. You came, he said. I stayed 10 feet away. What do you want? Colin, I asked. He reached into his pocket. He pulled out a small silver flash drive. I stole this, he said, from the council's server, before they locked me out. What is it? Emails. Colin said, internal comms between Dad, Marla, and Lyle Soren. Lyle Soren? I asked. The interim director? Colin nodded. He walked forward and held out the drive. Take it, he said. I took the cold metal in my hand. Why are you doing this? I asked. Yesterday you were begging me to sign. Colin looked at the ground. I read the script. He whispered, What script? On the drive, he said. There is a file named Wedding Contingency. It wasn't just a plan to stop the wedding. Grace, it was a script. They wrote lines for us. He looked up. His eyes were haunted. The auto-reply Aunt Sylvia sent you? It was pre-written 3 days ago. The text I was supposed to send? Scripted. Even the note Dad left at the hotel. Marla wrote it. I felt a wave of cold sickness wash over me. It was a play, I whispered. Every word. Colin said, they workshopped it. They sat in a conference room and discussed which phrases would hurt you the most, which buttons to push to make you collapse. He wiped his eyes. I went along with the money. Grace, I thought we were just borrowing it. But when I saw that file, when I saw how they engineered your humiliation, he shook his head. I can't be that person. I am a coward. Grace, but I am not a sadist. Who is Lyle Soren? I asked. Why is he involved? Colin's face darkened. Lyle is the one who brought in the lender. He said, he is the one who connected Dad to Vinnie Russo. Dad thinks Lyle is helping him. But, reading these emails, what? Lyle is pushing him, Colin said. Lyle is the one who suggested the bomb threat. Lyle is the one telling Dad to escalate. I think Lyle wants Dad to fail. Why? I don't know, Colin said. But be careful. Lyle is not like Dad. Dad is weak. Lyle is something else. Colin pulled his hood up tighter. I am leaving town, he said. I am going to stay with a friend in Vermont. I can't be here when this blows up. Coward, I thought, but at least he was a useful coward. Goodbye. Colin, I said. He hesitated. I am sorry. Grace, for not showing up. You showed up now. I said, it doesn't fix it, but it counts. He turned and disappeared into the fog. Back at the apartment, we plugged the flash drive into Tessa's air-gapped laptop. The files were organized by date. Project, preservation. That was what they called it. Not theft. Preservation. I opened the file named Wedding Contingency. It was exactly as Colin had described, a document formatted like a screenplay. Scene: morning of wedding. Action: all family members cease communication at 6 o'clock. Contingency A: if subject calls father, route to disconnect. Contingency B: if subject proceeds to chapel, activate protocol threat. I read the lines. Draft note for Grace. Don't marry him. If you do, you'll lose everything your mother left you. Note: use mother specifically. Subject has unresolved grief triggers. I had to look away. I felt bile rising in my throat. Subject has unresolved grief triggers. They had weaponized my mourning. They had turned my mother's death into a psychological lever. This is psychotic. Tessa breathed. This isn't just fraud. This is emotional torture. I scrolled to the emails. From Lyle Soren to Randall Martin. Subject: the solution, Randall. Stop worrying about the optics. If she marries him, we are all exposed. We need a hard stop, a shock to the system. Disruption is the only path to compliance. I will handle the venue. You handle the silence. I looked at the name, Lyle Soren. He was the architect. My father was the face, but Lyle was the brain. Tessa, I said. Look him up. Tessa was already typing. Lyle Soren. She read, Interim Director of the Family Renewal Council. Former consultant for... Oh, interesting. What? He used to work for a crisis management firm in DXC, Tessa said. The kind that cleans up scandals for politicians. He was fired for unethical conduct 5 years ago. He is a professional fixer, Ethan said. And he is using my father as a shield. I said. I stood up. I need to meet him. I said, Lyle? Tessa asked. Yes, if he is the one pulling the strings, then he is the one I need to break. I set up the meeting through the council's main line. I told the receptionist I was ready to negotiate a settlement. I knew that word would get through to him. We met at a coffee shop in the Marina district. It was public, crowded, and safe. Ethan and Tessa sat 2 tables away. Daniel Crowell had advised me, don't agree to anything, just let him talk. Let him think he is winning. Lyle Soren was a handsome man in his 40s. He wore a cashmere sweater and a smile that showed too many teeth. He didn't look like a monster. He looked like a catalog model for successful living. "Grace," he said, standing to shake my hand, "I am so glad you reached out. This has been a terrible misunderstanding." I didn't shake his hand. I sat down. "Cut the crap. Lyle," I said, "I have the flash drive." His smile didn't waver, but his eyes went flat. "I don't know what you mean." He said, "The internal emails." I said, "The script? The bomb threat? I know you orchestrated it." Lyle sat back. He sipped his espresso. "You have a vivid imagination." "Grace, I have proof," I said, "and I have a lawyer. And I have the bank on lockdown." Lyle sighed. He looked at me with a pitying expression. "Grace, look at the big picture," he said. "Your father is a good man. He made some complex investments. He did it for the community. The council helps thousands of families. He stole from his daughter." I said, "He borrowed from family to help the greater family." Lyle corrected. "He considers the community his children too." I felt a flash of rage. "My mother left that money to me," I said, "to ensure I had choices. Your mother is gone." "Grace," Lyle said softly, "her legacy isn't a bank account. Her legacy is the good work your father is doing. Do you really want to destroy that? Do you want to be the reason the food pantry closes? The reason the after-school program shuts down?" He is using the charity as a shield. I realized he is trying to make me the villain who hates orphans. My mother's legacy was me having a choice. I said, "It wasn't funding your salary." "Lyle." Lyle leaned in. The charm evaporated. "Listen to me. Grace," he said. His voice was a low hum. "Randall is a mess. We both know that. He is weak. He is panicking. If you keep pushing him, he is going to crack. And if he cracks, he is going to take a lot of people down with him." "Is that a threat?" "It is a reality check." Lyle said, "Randall is not in control of everything anymore. There are other interests involved. People who invested based on his promises. People who don't have patience for family drama. He means Vinnie Russo." I thought, he means the loan shark. "You are threatening me with the mob?" I asked loudly. Lyle flinched. He looked around the coffee shop. "Lower your voice," he hissed. I realized then what was happening. Lyle wasn't just managing Randall. Lyle was managing the debt. He was the middleman between the legitimate world of the council and the shadow world of the lenders. And if the audit happened, Lyle would be exposed to people far more dangerous than the police. He is afraid. I thought, he is more afraid than I am. My father is a pawn. I said. Lyle's eyes narrowed. "Your father is a liability," he said, "and you are becoming one too." I stood up. "I am not a liability." "Lyle," I said, "I am the deadline." I leaned down close to his face. "Tell your investors the money is gone." I said, "Tell them Randall Martin doesn't have the authority to sign a birthday card, let alone a check. And tell them if they come near me or my husband, I will live stream the contents of that flash drive to every news station in the state." I walked away. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from clarity. I got into the car with Ethan and Tessa. He admitted it. I said, effectively, "He is scared." "What did he say?" Ethan asked. "He said Randall is a liability." I said, "I looked out the window. The scheme has momentum beyond my father." I said, "My father started it, but Lyle and these lenders, they took it over. They are using him. They are bleeding him dry. And they are using my inheritance to keep the game going." "So what do we do?" Tessa asked. "We blow up the game board." I said, "We are not going to wait for the auditors. We are not going to wait for the police." I turned to them. "We are going to hold the wedding." I said, "The fake wedding?" Ethan asked. "The party?" "No," I said, "a reckoning." I looked at the date on my phone. The auditors arrive on Monday morning. I said, "So we hold the event on Sunday night. We invite the board. We invite the donors. We invite Lyle. And we invite my father. Why would they come? Tessa asked. Because I am going to tell them that I am ready to sign. I smiled, and it felt like armor. I am going to tell them that I have seen the light, that I want to save the family name, that I will sign the directive in front of everyone, as a gesture of unity. Ethan looked at me. He understood. And when they are all in the room, he said, when they are all in the room, thinking they have won, I said, that is when we show them the truth. I looked at the road ahead. Let's go plan a wedding. The invitation I sent out was simple. It was printed on heavy, cream-colored cardstock, the kind my father always insisted on because he said paper weight conveyed authority. The Martin family invites you to a unity reception. Sunday, October 19th, 7 o'clock in the evening, the Harbor View Room. An announcement regarding the estate and future of Grace Martin will be made. It was the bait they wanted. To my father, to Aunt Sylvia, and to Marla Klein. This read as a surrender. It read as, Grace is ready to sign. Grace is ready to come back to the fold. Grace has given up. I stood in the small dressing room at the back of the venue, looking at myself in the mirror. I had not put the wedding dress back on. That dress belonged to a version of me that had died on the steps of the Baylight Chapel 3 days ago. The version that needed approval. The version that thought love was something you had to earn by making yourself small. Instead, I wore a white suit. It was sharp, tailored, and blindingly bright. The trousers were cut wide, the blazer cinched at the waist. It was bridal white. But it was not a costume for a sacrifice. It was the uniform of a woman who was about to conduct business. Ethan stood behind me, adjusting his tie. He caught my eye in the mirror. You look dangerous, he said. I feel dangerous. I said. I smoothed the lapel of the jacket. Are they all there? Tessa just texted. Ethan said. He checked his phone. The room is full. Sylvia is there. The cousins. Marla Klein is sitting in the front row with a notary. Lyle Soren just walked in. And my father? Not yet. Ethan said. He will come. I said. He needs the signature too badly to stay away. I turned around. I took Ethan's hands. Thank you. I said. For what? For standing beside me. I said. For not trying to save me. For letting me do this myself. Ethan smiled. He kissed my forehead. I am just here for the fireworks, he said. We walked out of the dressing room and down the short hallway to the main event space. The Harbor View Room was a glass-walled box that jutted out over the water. It was usually used for corporate retreats and retirement parties. Tonight, the lights were dimmed, and the city skyline of Harbor Point glittered in the distance, a backdrop of electric jewels. There were about 30 people in the room. My family was clustered on the left. Aunt Sylvia wore a stiff blue dress and a look of vindicated triumph. My cousins, Mark and Sarah, looked bored but relieved, likely assuming their allowances were safe. Colin was there, sitting in the back, looking like a ghost in a gray suit. On the right side were the wolves. Marla Klein sat with her briefcase on her knees. Next to her was Lyle Soren, the interim director of the Family Renewal Council. He looked relaxed, chatting with a man I recognized as the bank executive Tessa had identified, Robert Vance. Scattered throughout the room were the witnesses. Daniel Crowell, my attorney, sat quietly near the front. Arthur Sterling from Silveridge Trust Services sat next to him, looking uncomfortable but resolute. And near the bar, sipping tonic water, were 3 people who looked like casual guests but were actually senior reporters for the state's largest newspaper and a producer for the local news station. Tessa's contacts. The room went silent as I walked in. I did not walk down a center aisle. I walked in from the side, my heels clicking rhythmically on the polished concrete floor. Ethan walked beside me, his hand lightly on the small of my back, not guiding me, just letting me know he was there. I walked to the front of the room. There was no altar, just a podium and a large projection screen. I stood behind the podium. I looked at them. Thank you all for coming on such short notice, I said. My voice was amplified by the microphone. Clear and steady. I know the last few days have been chaotic, and I know many of you have been worried about the future of the Martin family legacy. Sylvia nodded vigorously from the front row. She dabbed at her dry eyes with a handkerchief. "We are just so glad you came to your senses." "Grace," she called out. I smiled at her. It was a razor-blade smile. "I did come to my senses. Aunt Sylvia," I said, "that is exactly why we are here." I motioned to the side of the room. Tessa was standing by a laptop connected to the projector. "Hit it." "Tessa." The screen behind me flared to life. It did not show a slideshow of childhood photos. It did not show a wedding monogram. It showed a scanned document. The header read, "Project Preservation. Wedding Contingency. Final Draft." A ripple of confusion went through the room. Marla Klein squinted at the screen. Then her face went paper white. "What is this?" Marla demanded. Standing up, "This is privileged material." I ignored her. "For 3 days," I said, addressing the room. "I believed that my family boycotted my wedding because they disapproved of my fiancé. I believed my father was missing because he had a mental breakdown. I believed I was being protected." I pointed to the screen, but the truth is, nothing that happened on Saturday was an accident. It was a script. I read from the screen, my voice ringing out in the silent room. Action item, 9 o'clock hours. Send automated text from Aunt Sylvia. Script. "I can't talk right now." I looked at Sylvia. She had frozen, her handkerchief halfway to her mouth. "Does that sound familiar?" "Sylvia?" I asked. She stammered, I don't know what that is." I gestured to Tessa. The slide changed. It was a screenshot of the internal email from Marla Klein to Randall Martin. Subject, the note. Body, Randall. "Do not sign it. If you sign it, it opens a door for dialogue. It needs to be final. Use the phrasing we discussed regarding her mother. You will lose everything your mother left you." This targets the emotional center and induces compliance. The room was deadly silent. The kind of silence where you can hear a heartbreak. "Marla," I said, "you wrote the note that broke my heart on my wedding day. You drafted it like a contract clause. Targets the emotional center." Marla was gathering her things. "This is illegal," she hissed. "You obtained these documents through theft. I am leaving." "Sit down, Marla," Daniel Crowell said from the front row. His voice was calm, but it carried the weight of a gavel. "We have filed these documents with the State Bar Association this morning." Daniel said, "If you leave now, it will be considered flight." Marla froze. She slowly sat back down. I looked at the back of the room. Lyle Soren was not moving. He was watching me with eyes like a shark, but the script was just the beginning. I said, the goal was not just to stop a wedding, it was to force a signature. I motioned to Tessa. The screen changed to a bank statement. Harbor Point Family Renewal Council. Income source, Grantham Trust Reserve. Loan. Amount, $400,000. Status, default. My father, Randall Martin, has been using my mother's estate as a personal piggy bank for 5 years. I said, he built his reputation on money that wasn't his, and when the auditors were scheduled to arrive tomorrow morning, he realized the money was gone. I looked at the bank executive, Robert Vance. He was sweating, and he had help. I said, he had a board of directors who looked the other way. He had bankers who approved loans on collateral they knew was restricted. That is a lie, Robert Vance shouted. Standing up, is it? I asked. I looked at the back of the room. Colin, stand up. My brother slowly stood up. All eyes turned to him. Colin is a board member. I said, Colin, tell them. Colin looked at the floor, then at me. Then he looked at Lyle. It is true, Colin said. His voice was shaking, but audible. Colin! Sylvia shrieked. Be quiet! No, Colin said. He looked at Sylvia. It is over. Aunt Sylvia. He turned to the room. Randall used the money, Colin said. He told us it was a bridge loan. He said he would pay it back. But then Lyle brought in the private lenders, and the interest rates. We couldn't keep up. He pointed a shaking finger at Lyle Soren. He told Dad to do it. Colin said, Lyle wrote the plan. He said if we didn't stop the wedding, Grace would get control of the trust, and we would all go to jail. He said we had to break her. Lyle Soren laughed. It was a dry, dismissive sound. This is pathetic, Lyle said. A disgruntled son and a hysterical daughter. You have no proof of my involvement. Tessa hit a key. An audio file began to play. It was the recording of the threat call to the chapel. Tell Grace Elizabeth Martin that the ceremony stops now. Tell her that Eleanor would not want this. Then, a second audio clip played. It was a voicemail Lyle had left for Randall. Randall, it is Lyle. I took care of the chapel. The call is made. Now you do your part. Go dark. Do not answer her. We squeeze her until she signs. Lyle's face went rigid. The arrogance evaporated, replaced by a cold, hard fury. I looked at him. Tessa pulled the phone records. I said, You called from a burner. Lyle, but you paid for the burner with your corporate card. You are sloppy. I turned to Mr. Sterling from Silveridge. Mr. Sterling, I said, can you confirm the status of the Grantham Trust? Arthur Sterling stood up. He adjusted his glasses. Silveridge Trust Services has confirmed multiple unauthorized access attempts on the account, he said formally. We have also confirmed that Randall Martin attempted to transfer funds using a forged signature on Saturday morning. He looked at the family. Let me be clear, he said. Grace Martin is the sole beneficiary and the sole required signatory. The Protective Asset Directive you have been pushing is not a standard banking form. It is a document that would have stripped Ms. Martin of her legal rights. It is, in our view, an instrument of fraud. The word hung in the air. Fraud. Sylvia let out a sob. We were trying to save the family, she cried. She looked at me, her eyes pleading. Grace, please, if your father goes down, we all go down. The scandal will ruin us. The council will close. The bank will call our loans. We will lose the house. She stood up and reached for me. You are a Martin. Grace, family protects family. I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had sat at the head of the table at the Greywick Club and watched me be threatened. Family protects family? I asked. I gestured to the empty chair where my father should have been. Where was he on Saturday? I asked. Where were you? We were scared. Sylvia wept. You chose, I said quietly. You chose money over me. You chose a building over me. You chose a lie over me. I leaned into the microphone. You say if he goes down, you all go down. I said. I looked her in the eye. You already chose that. Sylvia, you chose that the moment you didn't show up for me. You jumped off the cliff together. Do not expect me to be the parachute. Suddenly, the double doors at the back of the room banged open. A man stood there. It was Randall Martin. He looked like a wreck. His expensive suit was wrinkled. He hadn't shaved in 3 days. His eyes were wild, darting around the room. He saw the screen. He saw the lawyer. He saw me in the white suit. Grace, he shouted. He stormed down the center of the room. The guests parted like the Red Sea, terrified. What are you doing? Randall screamed. He stopped 10 feet from the podium. You are ruining us. You are airing our dirty laundry in front of the press? I stood my ground. Ethan stepped slightly in front of me, but I put a hand on his arm to hold him back. This was my fight. I am not ruining us. Dad, I said, I am saving myself. You selfish child? Randall roared. He pointed a shaking finger at me. I did this for you. I built the council for you, to give you a legacy. And this is how you repay me? By destroying my reputation? You didn't build it for me. I said. My voice was calm. It was the calm of someone who finally sees the monster is just a man in a bad suit. You built it for your ego. I said, and you stole my mother's money to pay for it. I didn't steal it, Randall yelled. I invested it. It was going to be paid back. When? I asked. When the loan sharks came? When the auditors came? I picked up the Protective Asset Directive that was sitting on the podium. You wanted me to sign this, I said. You wanted me to sign away my future to cover your crimes. I ripped the paper in half. Again. Randall flinched as if I had slapped him. I wanted a father at my wedding, I said, my voice breaking for the first time. I didn't want a manager. I didn't want a portfolio. I wanted my dad. I looked at him, and I saw the truth. He didn't love me. He loved owning me. You didn't show up, I said, so neither do I. I am not signing. Dad, not today, not ever. Randall stood there, panting. He looked at Marla. He looked at Sylvia. They were all looking down, refusing to meet his eyes. He spun around and looked at Lyle Soren. "Lyle!" Randall shouted. "You said you would fix this." Lyle sat perfectly still. He crossed his legs. "You said if I stayed away, she would sign." Randall yelled. "You promised me immunity. You said it would be a clean fix." Lyle looked at Randall with an expression of mild distaste. "I said I would manage the situation." "Randall," Lyle said smoothly, "I didn't say I could manage your incompetence. You set me up!" Randall screamed. He lunged toward Lyle, but Robert Vance grabbed his arm, holding him back. "It was your idea to bring in Russo," Randall shouted. "You said he was a silent partner." The name Russo hit the room like a bomb. The reporters in the back started typing furiously on their phones. Lyle stood up slowly. He smoothed his sweater. He walked over to Randall. He didn't look afraid. He looked bored. "Randall?" Lyle said softly, but the microphone on the podium picked it up. "You were never the only one with obligations." The room went dead silent. It was a threat. It was a confirmation. Lyle wasn't just a bad consultant. He was the collection agent. Lyle looked at me. He nodded. Once, acknowledging the checkmate. Then he turned and walked toward the exit. "Stop him!" Sylvia screamed. "He is the one! He did it!" Daniel Crowell stood up. "Mr. Soren," Daniel said. His voice was loud. Lyle paused at the door. "The doors are not locked," Daniel said, "but I should inform you that the Harbor Point Police Department has been provided with a full digital copy of the flash drive Ms. Martin recovered, including the emails regarding the solicitation of illegal loans." Lyle didn't turn around. He pushed the door open. "Good luck with that," he said. He walked out into the night. Randall collapsed into a chair. He put his head in his hands. He looked small, defeated. The police were not storming the building. There were no sirens yet, but the air in the room had changed. The power had shifted. The guests were whispering. The reporters were making calls. The Silver Ridge rep was packing his briefcase with the air of a man closing a file forever. I looked at my father. He wasn't a titan of industry. He was just a man who had dug a hole and pulled everyone he loved in with him. I stepped out from behind the podium. "Grace," Randall whispered without looking up. "Help me." I looked at him. I felt a pang of the old instinct, the urge to fix it, to smooth it over, to handle the crisis. But then I looked at Ethan. He was watching me. He was waiting to see who I would choose. I walked over to my father. I leaned down. "I can't help you." "Dad," I said. I put a hand on his shoulder. It was a goodbye. "You have to help yourself." I stood up. I took Ethan's hand. "Let's go," I said. We walked down the center of the room. The crowd parted for us again, but this time, it wasn't out of confusion. It was out of respect. We walked past Sylvia, who was weeping silently. We walked past Colin, who looked at me with gratitude and shame. We walked past Marla Klein, who was frantically dialing her office. We pushed open the glass doors and walked out onto the deck. The night air was cold and salty. The wind whipped my white trousers. I took a deep breath. It tasted like freedom. "Are you okay?" Ethan asked. I looked back at the glass box. I could see them inside. Arguments starting. Phones ringing. The house of cards collapsing in real time. I looked at the water, dark, vast, and endless. "They didn't break me." I said, "No." Ethan said, "They didn't." I looked at him. "Do you still want to get married?" I asked. Ethan smiled. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a ring. My ring? The one I had taken off 3 days ago. "I would marry you in a courthouse, in a parking lot, or right here on this deck," he said, "as long as it is just us." I held out my hand. He slid the ring back onto my finger. It fit perfectly. Just us, I said. We turned away from the venue, away from the noise, and walked toward the car. Behind us, the lights of the harbor view room burned bright, illuminating the wreckage of the Martin family dynasty, but I didn't look back. I had a wedding to plan, and this time, the guest list was closed. Thank you for listening to Grace's story. This journey through betrayal, gaslighting, and ultimate reclamation is a reminder that sometimes the hardest people to stand up to are the ones who share our blood. I would love to hear your thoughts on Grace's decision. Did she do the right thing by exposing them publicly, or was it too harsh? And where are you listening from today? Please let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story, please make sure to subscribe to Revenge Stories for more tales of justice served cold. Until next time, stay safe. And remember, sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to play their game.